kill you.
And welcome back to another episode of Zaku Talk, where one of your hosts is a little bit Munsters and the other is a little Addams Family. I am your host, Patrick Scala. With me this season is the horse-like
Bob Scary VOA.
And this season, of course, is G versus Wing. And we are happy to have you back. Of course, we have Lev Van Rensselaer on the audio boards, keeping our sound so slippery sweet. So, Baba, what's been going on with you this week?
Well, this week I have been doing some soul searching. I've taken on meditation. I have been doing more marketing and promotion on my my Twitter feed and on my Twitch. And I've been deep diving into this Gunpla stuff, my friend. What about you?
So this week was sort of a busy week. I had a deadline come up to get sort of my upcoming animation project I talk about nearly every week approved by the powers that be. And so to do so, I had to put together two things to kind of help them get on board with sort of the odd script I've written. It's not quite a storyboard. No, it's sort of what we call a pitch deck. Where I took the script sort of scene by scene and made kind of this PowerPoint presentation and kind of highlighted things and then pointed to like reference clips or potential storyboards or storyboards from other movies already made to kind of help people get understanding, and then had to also detail like how each of those shots, scenes would have been done on a technological level, because some things are going to be live action. Some things are going to be live action with sort of an LED screen powered by the Unreal Engine that sort of works like a green screen kind of effect, but much better. Some things were going to be animated 2D. Some things were going to be animated in the Unreal Engine. And a lot of things were actually going to be a composite of 2 or 3 of these things. So I had to show which things was going to be animated or shot live action which way, how it was going to be safe to do that during the pandemic, if it were live action stuff, and what sort of the ultimate goal to look like was. And then I had to make something called a Rip-O-Matic, which is sort of like a mock trailer, but only with sort of pre-existing materials to kind of help give an idea of what the tone and the pacing of the film will be like. So what will it feel like consuming that media? And so, those were sort of kind of very in-depth sort of things that sort of took a lot of my time, and that's where most of my week has gone. But my project has been approved, and now it's time to move forward out of development into the fervent stages of pre-production.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear about it. And more accurately, I can't wait for you to fucking hire me. You better do it, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, I actually, in a newer draft, I wrote in a role that might work well for you. But let me see if it survives subsequent drafts, and then we can talk about that more.
All right.
All right. So this week we do episode 8 of G Gundam and Gundam Wing. So, Bob, why don't you give us a summary of G Gundam episode 8?
All right, G Gundam Episode 8, Old Grudge, Revenge of the Space Police, or, in Japanese, Kataki wa Utsu, Fukushu no Uchu Keiji. And I will say that that's almost a literal translation. Uchu Keiji is literally just space police, so we can infer that Fukushu is something to the effect of revenge. But to the description, Domon travels to Neo Canada to fight Andrew Graham and his Lumber Gundam, not Grizzly as Skeyhill would know it from the English dub. But Andrew refuses, and he is defeated unofficially as no official match takes place. Andrew takes Rain hostage in order to lure Argo out. He holds a grudge against Argo because his wife was killed by Argo back in Argo's pirating days. Argo's pirate ship had collided into the space station she was in, causing her to get lost in space. Argo takes the bait and goes to find the Lumber Gundam. The fight ensues, but Domon loses his patience and goes to get Rain back. After a few maneuvers, the Shining Gundam falls off a cliff and the Lumber Gundam is left hanging on to said cliff. Argo helps the Lumber Gundam up, much to the surprise of everyone else. It is then revealed that Argo tried to save Andrew's wife, not kill her.
That is a summary that is very afraid of pronouns, but thank you for summarizing nonetheless. Over here in Gundam Wing, we have Episode 8, The Treize Assassination, Torezu Ansatsu. Which seems to be easy to pick apart.
Ansatsu is literally assassination or assassinate.
Mm-hmm. Troa and Wufei go after Treize, while Hero Duo and Catra attempt to stop the detonation of the new Edwards base. Wufei and Treize duel in a battle, but Treize decides to spare Wufei when the young man loses and allows him to escape. What was the name of the Canadian Gundam in Japanese?
So the Japanese name is the Lumber Gundam, as opposed to the English dub translation, the Grizzly Gundam.
So you had talked in the pre-show about finding it interesting that the American version has now had to change 2 Gundam names. The Tequila one made a lot of sense if you know what your target demographic is. I'm not sure why the Lumber happened to becoming Grizzly in the American version. Maybe they thought it would be more intimidating. All right, give it to me.
What is the main maneuver that the Lumber Gundam uses on the Shining Gundam?
I legitimately have no idea.
It is a bear hug.
Okay, but why? I don't understand why change it. Because
it doesn't look like a lumberjack and it doesn't look like it's made of wood. So they tried to come up with a name that made more sense for it and seemed more dynamic than Lumber Gundam. I don't go to Home Depot and lose my shit.
Okay, but why not change?
If you put me in a bear pit, I'm going to lose my shit.
Why not change I don't know. Like the Bolt Gundam name is sort of odd. I don't understand how that's Russian based. Does it have a lot of bolts in it that I'm not seeing?
It kind of has a Frankenstein vibe to it. It uses the Megaton hammer as its primary weapon, and that uses sort of plasma, sort of electric attack to do the thing. But because it is a Frankenstein of other Gundam pieces going into it, an easy way to try and sidestep it instead of being, well, why isn't it the Neo-Transylvanian Gundam if it's the Franken Gundam? They just call it the Bolt Gundam, like the bolts in the neck of a Frankenstein.
Yeah, a lot of odd names so far. I look forward to seeing which names they change up after that. This episode opens up with people in ridiculous space costumes, and it takes me back to my younger days of watching late 70s, or I guess mid-70s Godzilla films, where all the bad guys had ridiculous space costumes. So, I had a little reminder of that as I was watching it. Yeah, so like the key one that always sort of was the weirdest one in my mind is the Godzillaverse Megalon, where the Atlanteans send the creatures from under the sea, but they look like late 60s space aliens. And nothing says timeless, classical, ancient civilization than the attire that they were wearing, and then you see a similar type of attire here in the show, and you're like, oh yes, that takes me back.
Remember when Gundam came out, and if this was an anniversary series, as I'm to understand it, it's a head nod to the earlier days of Gundam. This is only supposed to take place 5 years prior to when the show actually takes place, but it's just interesting to me to see them in what does definitely feel like a Lost in Space situation. For those listeners in Spaceland there, I had to call my wife over to give me the names of 2 older anime that this scene reminded her and myself of. Argo Gulski's space pirate ship looks awfully like Captain Harlock's. And the whole scenario reminded her of the irresponsible Captain Tylor. So if you're interested in watching more space sci-fi anime, those are 2 that you might want to pick up.
Tylor, great name. If I were a 5-year-old named Tyler and I wanted to be a supervillain, that would be what I changed my name to. So it is to a degree an anniversary series, but nobody has looked that ridiculous. The closest they come is the 2 Gundams that come out in the late 80s, where some people's hair looks like 80s people's dyed wacky hairstyles.
You mean like the Neros Gundam's pilot?
Yeah, it was crazy that they're still holding that over halfway through the 90s, although, when you're making it, it's probably starting in 92, 93. So,
well, even then,
of course, you would have some holdover.
MTV was a thing, and if you're going to try and show an international punk, the best way to do is to try and rip off America.
Was MTV big in Japan in the early 90s?
The style would have been. You had a lot of Yankee, and the Yankee are just generally street punks. They tend to talk very rude and act very rude and wear things that go against society. So you can think of them like a biker gang, but punks at the same time. So if you've watched Akira, the kids that are all in their little future gang, those are Yankee. They take on some American rudeness and call themselves Yankees Yankee.
Mm-hmm. And I love Japan's view of Canada, which is that Canadians are lumberjacks and Canada is Niagara Falls and a bunch of trees. So we got to learn a little geography there. That's pretty good. Domon has sort of a fight that kind of comes out of nowhere with Rain, but at least it went somewhere that seemingly the show needed to have Domon go so that we could kind of contextualize that relationship a lot better.
It's interesting you say that, though, because I saw something very different, and I don't know if it's just how the English dub translated things. Mm-hmm. On my side, the tension lied in the fact that Domon was frustrated that he had to carry this burden. He can't ask Rain to carry it with him because it's supposed to be a man's duty sort of bullshit. And so he's getting frustrated with her saying, hey, you should take a rest. Hey, you should breathe a little. Hey, don't carry the world on your shoulders. And he's like, no, I gotta. It's easy for you to say, you don't have to carry this. And so because of that, he's getting frustrated because she's not recognizing it. And then in his pissy mood is the one that pushes her further away. But that lets us get our nice tie up towards the end.
Yes. A lot of that subtext was not there. He wasn't sort of any more pissy here than he was in earlier episodes. He just seemed to, he seemed to like jump out. She's like, hey, I see we're enjoying this nice waterfall or something like that. And he's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. And it was just like, what? How did we get here? It's the first line of the show and you're already jumping down her throat. So, a little ridiculous there. And then, like midway through, he's just like, whatever, we're not partners anymore. And I go, how did we get there so quickly?
Yeah.
But then
it's the same over here.
Then at the end, but I don't know if, the way you phrase it, I'd buy that. It didn't come through greatly here in the English version. Again, I've had a hard time sort of understanding certain parts of these shows, so maybe it went over my head. But then, when he's at the end and he's begging, Russian guy to spare, Rain, I just like, okay, well, I get why they did that now. It seems like this is something we should be doing. It's nice to see him care about her because he feels like mostly he's mean to her the whole time. So that feels good. It did feel weird that everybody was sort of afraid that Gundam was going to fall when Domon's Gundam just fell and everything seemed fine.
Well, the difference is that with Domon, he's a superior martial artist that everybody acknowledges. He continues to be called the King of Hearts, and that will become more and more important as time goes on. But for this guy who only became a Gundam fighter so he could have the opportunity to murder someone, he might not be as capable, and he's relying purely on brute strength. Rain is in there as well, and she at this point is not being shown as being a capable Gundam fighter or somewhere in the pilot cockpit. So it's fair to say that if they fall, it could just as easily mean that she slaps her head against something and dies, snaps her neck.
So was there a reason that I missed that he couldn't get back in his Gundam and try to catch her? Or did it get damaged too badly in the fall and that's why he got to get out of it?
The latter. The presumption is it fell so hard that there was no way for it to boot up in time, and it was taking on water damage. Okay.
So this Canadian man wants revenge, has decided to become a Gundam pilot to get revenge, somehow has become the easiest way to kill the Russian man. Is the government... it seems like he might come back again. Is the Canadian government mad at him the way the Mexican government was mad at the pilot from last episode for not sort of participating actively in the Gundam fight?
No, because I don't know if they explain it well enough in the dub, but the way it's explained on my end is he is the Gundam fighter. He knows that because the Neo-Russians know that their strategy no longer works, they're going to bounce around to all the strongest ones. And right now, Neo-Canada seems to be towards the top because it's a direct match of strength. Because of that, because this guy went from being the puny Lost in Space guy into this hulking lumberjack, it's presumed that he was going to be one of the first in line. He intentionally set himself up to be the best match against Argo. Thereafter, he says, I don't care. As soon as I kill him, I'm probably going to jail anyway, so just tell me what you know about him, and I'll give you my head. I'll lean over and let you just crush that shit.
The Canadian government doesn't care because he's hanging around his Gundam, just not doing anything.
He's going to actively fight him in a official Gundam match.
Okay, but they didn't know that before then, right?
The other guy was actively avoiding everybody in the government. This guy's probably just going through the motions.
That's what I'm saying. Because he's hanging around the Gundam, they're like, okay, well, whenever you feel like it, go to town. But they're not like, shit, we got to find him because he's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. He's not in hiding. He is exactly where he needs to be.
So what makes, because it comes up as, right, Domon is fighting the Grizzly Gundam that, the fight isn't official, so Domon can attack the cockpit. How do I know as the viewer if a fight is official or not?
So as a viewer, you are listening for them to say, in this case, I'm going to just use Argo because I've already forgot. Oh, right. Graham, Andrew Graham. Domon should have said, Andrew Graham, I challenge you to a Gundam fight. And when doing that, if he then says, I accept, it is a verbal contract, but it is a contract nonetheless. They have gone through the motions with somebody witnessing it. As opposed to Domon asking, Andrew saying no, Gundam's, Domon still saying, okay, well, you can't say no because I said so, and going for it anyway in the first fight. And then in the second fight, going for the cockpit is a big old no-no, but because nobody strictly said this is a Gundam fight, it is considered unofficial.
So does that mean will Domon get in trouble going forward because he did that?
Well, as it was shown to us, the Russian Lady Un, as I'm going to remember her because I can't seem to remember the woman's name.
Yep.
Russian Lady Un decides that she's going to turn a blind eye to the situation because it's still going to benefit her. One of her KGB guys on the airship they were on is trying to say, hey, this is foul play. This isn't good. She goes, well, it's technically not an official fight, so as long as it's not an official fight, I think it depends on who's watching and who's willing to call the bullshit.
Well, so why doesn't it benefit her to get another country's pilot in trouble?
I want to say it's probably got to do something with official wins versus just removing bodies.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Really, it's something to not get too mixed up into because it will come and it will go.
Okay. And then another... and to go back, I guess, earlier to the spacesuits thing, what it felt to me is more like another sort of symbol of the type of genre that this show wants to be, and why I guess it made me think of the Godzilla comparison is that you've compared some of those, late Showa era Godzilla films to sort of the Kamen Rider shows and things that you've watched in that nature. So it would make sense that this show, which wants to be more like that than a Mobile Suit show, would kind of do these things that those, early mid 70s Godzilla films would do. So I would buy that.
But in this same episode, as soon as it happened, I told Allie, my wife, that I was going to have to kick your ass because there is very much one of those moments in episode 8 of Gundam Wing, and I can't wait to rip into it once we get
very much of one of what moment?
One of these not realistic moments. I don't want to get into it until we get to Gundam Wing, but
Okay.
we are going to have another over the top, not realistic for all the other realism that we've had so far in our giant robot war intrigue stuff that we've had so far.
I'm not calling the spacesuits realistic. Who the fuck knows what spacesuits will look like? But it just feels like an odd kind of style, this retro sort of feel to it. So it seems an odd, I don't know. It made sense that this show would do it. Just like we kind of have Domon sort of digivolving into the G Gundam, in his sort of final battle there, where he's like sort of like he calls for the G Gundam, he does his pose, then the Gundam's doing his pose, and like instantly he's now in there. We've cut out all this stuff. He's sort of
okay. So I am going to touch on that real quick.
Yeah,
that is a common thing that will occur after you've done the head banging into people of this is what this sequence looks like.
Yes.
Now that we've seen it 1,000 times, we're not going to waste our time on the transformation sequence, as it were, and we're just going to do the shorthand. So if we hear the snap that he does and we see the Gundam move, we're going to fill in the rest in our heads and move on.
Yes, and I think that makes sense to do that because it feels like a waste of time, and Digimon did it, and I imagine the Power Rangers do it, and the Kamen Riders do it, so it makes sense that, in these shows that involve kind of, it's sort of like a transformation because it makes a big gesture of him getting in the Gundam, getting suited up to fight the Gundam, doing his power-up, start, pose. So, of course, at some point you want to shorthand it or you wouldn't have any time to have an actual script. So,
exactly.
So yeah, that made sense that they would do that, just like it made sense they'd have the wacky looking spacesuits. Like I'm not dogging the show for its doing it. I'm just getting that it would do it because it's in that vein.
I see now. It sounded like some of the frustrations that we had in the earlier episodes, which our listeners should absolutely go back and listen to if they're starting on this episode now.
Well, viewer, it is an interesting choice that you chose to star in episode 8 for this type of podcast. I'm not sure what advantage there is to jumping around to different episodes. I sort of said last episode that, now that, over the course of those first 5 episodes, now that I've come to expect a different set of things from this Gundam show, it becomes easier to take in what the show's trying to do, even if they're not things that I, as a viewer, would want to see, or I, as a creator, would want to create. That's sort of not the point of film criticism. What language is it trying to speak, and how effectively is it doing that?
And that said, being about 20% into this, give or take an episode or two, what are your feelings of how this series is taking on your Gundam legacy through this lens?
Well, so that's a very good question. And the answer to that I thought very long and hard about. And the answer is, I don't know. I'm actually less interested in sort of the Gundam legacy. But, it's sort of, we're in a genre that I'm not well versed in and haven't consumed much, I don't know, for over 20 years. So it's actually sort of interesting to kind of learn this language as I'm in this foreign land. I had a roommate long, long ago, and she, after she left high school, just said, F it, I'm going to Italy, and just went there, and that was how she learned Italian, just by being in it. So I'm interested to see what do I pick up as I sort of delve more in this show, and what kind of things pop into my head from my youth, like, the Godzilla vs. Megalon spacesuit thing, or these kind of evolutions that I sort of hadn't thought about. Because there was a time in Digimon where if you'd have to watch them be a rookie, transform to the next form, then transform to the next form, and you'd have to watch like 3 of them do that in a row. And at a certain point, I was so grateful when they just started compressing it, like, all right, first form to third form, boom, done. And we're not doing the whole song. We just sort of get into all of them real quick. And I was like, woohoo, time for more stuff to happen. So, yes. So, what kind of things will pop up in my head from childhood? Who knows? Hopefully nothing I've repressed, because I'm not ready for that yet.
Oh, buddy. Get ready. But yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. Where, as I've said before, I definitely see where my adoration for this style of storytelling started in this area, obviously with Saban and all that bullshit too, but starting around G Gundam forward, I find myself leaning more into the Japanese superhero storytelling. And that's definitely what this feels like. It feels less like a war and more like a superhero story.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. And there is, what is interesting about this Russian guy, even though it doesn't say a lot, there's sort of this old, there's like an old podcast that's been on for a while. It's called Script Notes. It's got these two Hollywood writers, and they sort of kind of talk each week about sort of, how to improve your writing, how to, industry sort of tips, things like that.
Are they well-known writers?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they have an episode called Only the Interesting Scenes that came out a couple months ago that sort of was great for me to hear, where they're like, if you have a scene and nothing's happening and it's just there to kind of convey an exposition or something like that, you either have to cut it or you have to find a way to make it interesting. So maybe as they're discussing the plan for the bank robbery, they're in a car and there's a bomb in it or something. Or if somebody's going to the bank to cash a check, maybe it gets robbed. You have to find a way to make that interesting or it's not going to sustain us. And so what is so interesting about this Russian character is that he literally does have a bomb on his chest, holding him against his will, where everybody else, other than, the other three fighters we've seen, they've kind of chosen to do this. And then Domo meets this guy that, like him, is sort of forced into it, and wouldn't participate if they didn't have to. And so that becomes sort of an interesting thing for this side character to have.
So that brings me to ask another question of you for the dub versus the sub. Do they talk about why Argo is doing this besides being in jail?
They didn't. In the first episode, they introduce him. He got captured, and I think he has some friends, and the friends were going to get executed or something if he didn't do it. I think that's what I remember.
That's what I was trying to find out, is whether or not they made mention in this episode to remind you that, yes, he has his crew, and he's trying to keep them alive by forcing himself through the fight.
I actually am less interested in that. All I need is just that he has the bomb. Like, that's enough, because I don't know. A lot of people would do things they wouldn't do if a bomb were strapped to them. Whatever additional motivation you have is sort of gravy at that point.
Well, I mean, I guess, but to me, the bomb is, I'm a bad guy and I'm being forced because of bomb. The I've got to save my crew shows at least a sense of loyalty and honor, which is something that you may not associate to this heavy-browed, big, muscly guy with a bomb on his chest. Now there is some sympathy to be had beyond just he's a person with a bomb on his chest.
Well, I think that's enough for me because, one, I don't think that sort of the pirate with a code of honor, a thief's code of honor, is interesting any more than an Italian mob boss who really loves his mother is, because it's just been done so much that
now
it's sort of
it has been
obvious.
done so much now. At that time,
it has been done much then too, Bob. I hate to break it to you. It was a very common thing in movies in the 50s and 60s when they loved to make these kind of dashing post-Errol Flynn kind of thievery roles. And it goes way back all the way to times of Robin Hood. So, I'm not giving a break to the show from the mid-90s. It's old.
All right.
Old.
Well, fuck you too.
So, but what I'm saying is, it's okay that it's old, because the most interesting part is that they attached a bomb to him. And, at any point, I don't know, like that, there's a literal ticking bomb in every scene this guy's in that could F up anything, including any of the people around him. So everything else is whatever you want. If you need us to like this guy because you're so afraid of having anything that could be resembling a bad guy that we identify with, then fine. But I don't need it personally.
So were there any other points that you wanted to take on with G Gundam before we move over to Gundam Wing?
No, I don't know anything. I feel like I've done most of the talking on G Gundam. Anything that
I feel like that's what we've been doing throughout the podcast so far. Is you go on your rant about G Gundam and I try to answer things, and then I try to go on to at least a few questions, if not a rant, on Wing, and you give me answers.
Well, then that sounds good to me. Then come on over here to Wing Zone and tell me what's going on in Episode 8 for you.
All right, so Episode 8. I like that we're effectively picking up off of where we were last week with the assassination of the entirety of the pacifist section of the Alliance and the overthrowing, and having to see Hiro feel so good about having done what he did until he realizes his mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this kid so drawn to the Death Wish? Like, compared to the others in this team I'm using in air quotes here, why is he so inclined to just throw his life away? Is this something that we're going to explore as we continue forward?
How to answer this correctly? Yes.
Okay. So, moving from that, then I suppose I did find it interesting that Duo continues to be astounded with this kid, and is definitely, in terms of the color coding that I've mentioned before, is definitely the blue to our hero's red, in that he buddies up and is a great foil. And that's some of the wording I used when I was talking about it earlier with my wife. The way that you have described off air Duo Maxwell as being boring compared to the other four, I'm sure is not untrue when you put him next to the other four. However, I also know that based on our decade and a half friendship, most of the things that I tend to like, you've said are boring. So I'm holding out that I'm taking your idea of this character with a grain of salt and going to maybe have a fulfilling meal out of his story as opposed to just the dregs.
Well,
because in a 5-man team, there's always one that gets the dregs.
I don't think if somebody gets the dregs, I don't think it's Duo. The issue with Duo, listen, and from watching it once, you'll watch it. Duo will sort of be charismatic and he'll be charming and fun. And so that'll be fun. It's fine. And it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I have no problem with it either. There's just, I don't know if you could get a meal out of it, but you could be satiated by it. It'll get the job done. It's good. You'll laugh. You will like his balance compared to some of the other pilots. So that's all. That's it. So
okay.
yeah,
no,
so it is.
Fine.
So
I like...
yeah, and it's fun to see Duo with Hiro because Duo, and I can say this because we don't find this out in the show or in the movie. It's in other manga materials. Duo is one of the two pilots that has no combat experience prior to this. So
really?
Yes. So he's sort of jumping in. He used to be sort of like a thief orphan kid. He was taken in by a church. It's why he sort of has like a priest-like looking outfit on. And he's like sort of like he's like Aladdin, you know, he's like a bandit thief. He's like fun and charming, but he has to steal for a living. So he's pretty good at it. But he sort of, for reasons that you do find out a little bit, he comes into possession of this Gundam and so like wants to go and fight Oz. So when he goes down and sees Hiro, you know, Duo thinking of himself as just like a regular dude, sees Hiro being like James Bond. He's just like, shit, these people are real. I thought these were just movies. And so I don't like that. Yeah. So you do get sort of comic relief out of it. And so, yeah, it is a fun interplay. The group of 5 that they have play off each other in very interesting ways. So there's nothing wrong with liking Duo, but you know, if you're going to dig in and sort of, you know, savor the bone, the Duo doesn't offer much. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
No, and I'm sure that is the case. What I'm looking forward to seeing is how this is all going to take place, how I'm going to fall in love with Ketra and, oh God, I'm forgetting. I know Wu Fei, I know Ketra, I know Duo, I know Hiro. Who's number 5? The one with the long hair and the sad boy? Troa. Okay, because my brain keeps wanting to say Trace instead of Troa, even though I know that Trace is our effective main, again, air quotes, antagonist.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you use the term falling in love because I don't know how necessary that is, you know, for making media that people care about.
I like to endear myself with characters. When I watch, I have 2 things that I need. I need story that I can find myself wanting to get more information on. And I want characters that I give a shit about so that when the story happens to them and through them, I am more willing to buy whatever shenanigans occurs.
Sure, but if of course you need those things if you want to do a traditional narrative. But if your thing that makes you care about them is that you like them, then you know you're probably going to have a hard time getting through Gundam Wing.
Even if I don't like them as people. I need to like them as characters. I need to be able to believe that this is a character. Now, whether Ketra is still the sweet boy this whole time or if he ends up being a conniving little shit, I don't care. It will be dynamic enough to watch over time this evolution of a character as I've been shown him at the beginning and how I perceive him at the end.
Well, and
as long as it's believable and it's not just then I can live with that.
Well, that, you know, I don't want to get too into the dregs, but it feels like the whole sort of tokusatsu genre doesn't care that much about believability and likes the mwahaha.
That is a very broad statement. I'm not going to say that you're wholly wrong, but that is a very broad statement.
Fair. And we can kind of keep tapping into that too. So, yes, and what you said earlier, it sort of goes into my crux that I think we have this belief that characters need to be likable. I don't know how true that is. I think they just need to be interesting. And that is what you will get.
Yeah, here. And that's likability and intrigue are of similar weight. Even if I hate a character, I love to hate certain characters. I need to be able to want to hate that character and be intrigued by that as much as I need to love a protagonist. And if the protagonist is still that hate, like I can see why you would feel for Domon right now and why I do somewhat for Hiro, not quite understanding this poor child compared to the others. Then that's fine because I'm going to see the evolution of this individual.
Yeah, and I think one of the weaknesses of these early episodes and why I think the show doesn't really begin until now and why I think it's sort of more interesting to view Gundam Wing in as the role of protagonist is that their goal of getting us to identify with Hiro specifically is look at all these cool things he's doing. And that's not a very strong way to build that trust and relationship. And it's unfortunate that it took us 7 episodes to get to sort of an interesting crossroads for him to do. And I don't know how necessary that would be if I were to redo it. I'd probably find another way to kind of hint at it earlier, much like I wanted them to do for Domon. So, yeah, so you don't really have an interesting way to approach it if he's just sort of being cool badass all the time. But fortunately now we're into a slot where all these people are kind of entering into their second act and finding their limitations, which one of the characters does indeed do in this episode.
Yes, and this is where I want to get into that bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, Wu Fei.
Yes.
After getting into a fight with Lady Yun.
Yes.
Who continues to be a character that I hate, but I love to hate her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, showing that there is merit in not loving a character so long as I love their character. He then goes ahead and shoots from the Shenlong Gundam his little claw thing, and without batting an eyelash, Treize just watches as this thing goes across the ocean towards him, crashes through his quarters, and is left with nary a scratch. Now, for a series so far that has had fairly realistic situations, albeit using giant mecha, this was kind of bizarre, and I think that's fair to say.
I disagree.
Okay, pray tell.
Well, I don't know what it's a big room that he's in. Like, I don't understand what scratches you expect him to have when the arm didn't get near him. It
literally goes by him.
Yes, it does go by him 5 feet away to his right. So the whole building didn't collapse down on him. When he would get a scratch, it's still standing.
Realistically, where most of this has been, because there's been a lot of just single impact explosion stuff going on so far because of, you know, hitting electronics and fuel lines and what have you, right?
Yes.
Just I'm doing a check-in right now.
It's all good so far.
Okay. If something goes at that speed as a wrecking ball 5 feet from you, at the least, you are going to be hit with several pieces of debris and dust and everything else, not even including shrapnel yet, because we're on a ship. So all of that siding should be metal. To have this person have that go by, not even close his eyes as it happens, as he stares him down, and then just there's no like shockwave impact. There is nary a level of repulsion from the impact. And I don't know that I believe that anybody, a U.S. Navy SEAL or a fucking higher up in any government's military, would not protect themselves from something like that. Am I supposed to believe that this guy's charisma of intimidation is strong enough to stop him from looking away, to look cool, to... I don't even know that this guy is able to see him from that spot. We don't have G Gundam zoom in on the inside of their cockpits.
So there's two ways I kind of have to approach this. One, just him not moving at all, yes, is meant to convey something that we can get into a discussion later on in this episode, as we talk about the fight with Wu Fei and Lady Yun. Two, sure. As for shrapnel and dust flying around, one, they probably didn't want to animate it. And two, I can accept that we don't see that in the same way that I can accept that these giant mobile suits exist. Like, for me, they're on that level. Just like, so I don't have a problem with that. Just like in G Gundam, I had to accept that, in the reality of that show, there's a giant floating boxing ring in space. And so
I think that's the
fine.
difference, though, and that's why I'm trying to press on it. It's the only reason why I'm trying to press on it.
The difference is just the level of realities we're in there. We already have to suspend a certain level of disbelief to believe that mobile suits could exist in the capacity that they are in the show. So I've already been on board with that. So if a hand's going to go through a wall and he's not going to like shake a little bit, that just feels like I'm actively trying to find things to get annoyed by.
I think it's my protective nature of knowing that G Gundam is absolutely on a different story place from Gundam Wing.
And why I was having issues with it earlier was just simply I wasn't used to the grammar of that genre yet. And
okay.
So things were confusing me. I wasn't trying to find them. I was just like, why are they doing this? And you're like, well, because it's harkening back to this tradition and this style and this trope. And I go, okay. And the more that came in, I was like, okay, fine. So, you just sort of start to accept like, okay, well, that's the world of this. And so if I can suspend the mobile fighter technology, it becomes easier to take in the Devil Gundam and to take in the boxing ring. And so, is it ridiculous that people in action movies walk away from explosions and they're fine? Yes, but they're in a weird physics rule anyway, and we've already accepted that for the first 40 minutes of the movie. So to nitpick that, but be fine with clicking out sort of the casing where all the bullets are out of the gun and having somebody slip on it because you timed it perfectly. If I'm fine with that, I got to be okay with the explosion. Like, I've already signed on. It's too late. So if I'm signing on
that's a fair way to put it.
So I'm signing on for the giant robots. I guess this is fine. And even still 10 times into this, it's the least interesting thing and this just might be me, because when I would watch these shows with Micah, he would always pay attention to little battle things and kind of talk about them, what he liked, what he was confused by. And that's the stuff that's sort of the most boring to me in these shows. So if Wu Fei's sort of just throwing in that arm, I'm not interested in that moment. I'm interested in like, oh, he's going to finally come out. What's going to happen when they meet? It's weird that they're already having a battle with this guy that they're setting up to be the main bad guy of the show so early on. So like, what are they going to do with it if we have, 41 more episodes to go? So that's just not even something I'm focusing on. And I had to think about going back as you were sort of complaining about it. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could see that weird. But then I was just like, okay, but they're in giant fucking mobile suits with enough jet propelling on Earth, and they work on atomic reactors that are inside of them that have a perpetual motion device in them. So we've already sort of had to lose a lot to believe the mobile suits.
Hold up.
Yeah.
They have fucking perpetual motion devices in them?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's not
that is news to me.
It's not specifically explained in this Gundam, but and I don't really in no Gundams aside from the UC do they talk about how the nuclear engines work on these Gundams. They might in G Gundam, I don't remember. But
I don't believe
essentially there's a particle called the Minovsky particle, and something about the reactor of breaking down Minovsky particles to fuel the reactor creates more of them so that you can kind of keep recycling through, and that's how you power it. There's still fuel issues, which is why, Gundams are mostly built for space, and so on Earth you have limited sort of fighting capabilities because it's a lot harder to use your thrusters because you're so massive. So you're sort of limited there. But yeah, in general, if I'm accepting that, there are certain other things I kind of have to accept.
That's
so
fair.
and in the manga version, they actually do clean that up a little bit, and there is Wu Fei comes down from above, he rips a hole open in the ceiling, and then Wu Fei jumps in, and then they begin their duel. So that, in the manga, they sort of made it a little less wacky too, and I think it was a good change. So at least the show does acknowledge, I don't know, that perhaps it could have been done better, and I do agree with that, but it didn't take me out of the episode because I just wanted to see this duel happen, especially since it's called the Treize assassination. Are we killing him off 8 episodes in?
Unsuccessful assassination.
Who knows? It was not successful. Bob, I want to get your take on why you think Treize challenged Wu Fei.
My understanding of Treize so far is that he is, at the very least, a little narcissistic in the way that he manages himself and making sure that he is a part of the visuals of the war and everything else. He wants to see if there's someone that is his equal or better. I am willing to believe that means that he wants to find someone that will actually push him to his limits. And so if he's seeing this kid that has the gall to go ahead and rip a hole in his personal quarters, well, then, yeah, come at me, kid. You might be worth it.
So
that's my initial take.
And those are fair reads based on the information you have. But here's some more information you might have forgotten. The ship was leaving, and Wu Fei had to chase after it. The Treize could see Wu Fei on that other ship and Lady Un stopping him. So why did Treize pick that moment then to do it when, if what you said is his real goal, he could have done it really at any time?
So that leads to a question about Lady Un.
Yes.
So far, my take on Lady Un is she is going to be our more out of control commander in the archetypes that we have presented to us so far. She is so obsessed with her perfection and to be of service to her seemingly beloved Treize, that to see her in danger, and previously in the episode seemingly gone berserk and just was willing to set off all the missiles in the base, to which Treize acknowledges when her plan fails. I guess we have to thank these Gundams because that was reckless, and human life is frail and you can't just be extinguishing it left and right. I think it's definitely an attempt to prove a point of what he believes is his goal, is his mission to Lady Un. It has little to nothing to do with Wu Fei, per the information that I have now and what I have known through watching the show so far.
I also agree it has nothing to do with Wu Fei until it's over. No, well, so yes, he seems to, there's sort of two things he does with Lady Un in the show that should be noted. One is, yes, sort of scolding her for not understanding the ways of Oz through her tactics when she sets off the self-destruction device at the New Earthwood base. Two is when he sort of tells her, hey, stand down, I'll fight Wu Fei, it's okay. He leaves her with an image, with this image of like a pastoral scene.
Yeah, to calm her.
I think
is my take on that.
I think that in this moment, Treize is doing it. Treize is challenging Wu Fei to protect her because she will surely die if Treize doesn't come back with his boat and intercede.
I mean, that is a fair take. There is nothing in the text so far that leads me to believe that he actually cares about Un. I know that he sees her as a valuable asset to his mission.
So you brought up the term archetype, and I think this show is preying on that for you. So just keep that in mind as you keep watching.
That it's preying on that for me.
Yeah, they know you're coming in with these archetype associations and your thoughts on doing it. But you're going to have more instances where you're like, okay, last episode, Treize, skillfully maneuvered the killing of sort of this group of assembly people from the Federation, and now he's mad at Lady Un for attempting to sort of mass wanton killing. So like, what is it? And you're going to get sort of more of these moments where sort of his philosophy and other characters' philosophies, including your main pilots, are not going to make sense. And and I think it's why they spent so much in these 7 episodes kind of creating less interesting portraits of them to get you into sort of a groove for then you to get more confounded as the show goes on and you start to see different sides of these, 14 characters as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, I'm still elated that there is something that involves this idea of having all the characters being numerical. But I kind of stepped aside from a point that I wanted to ask. Why is it so important that we see Relina as the final portrait in the oh God, what's the term for it? The coming back from commercial piece, the junction.
Why? Well, I think because they too know that she's sort of this very important character as well, and it might not feel it yet, but as the show goes on and as she sort of continues, probably the most profound arc in the show, I don't know. Again, I do believe that she's a protagonist for a reason, so to me, it always made sense that she was the last one in there. She's sort of like the mainest character.
Well, and so that's why I think it's so interesting is that even in an episode like this, where she is nowhere to be found.
Yes.
She is not involved in any way, shape, or form. She is still always seemingly in the background over everybody else's head. And I just wonder why it is every time and not like in a lot of other shows that might use this as part of their welcome back junction. They will change it up every so often. So it might not be Relina this time. Maybe it's Noin, or maybe it's whoever,
Yes, because they didn't put the budget towards that, Bob. It's as simple as that. Like we think of Gundams as sort of these big, massive properties, but the reason why they have to use so much stock footage is because their budgets are only so much. And Gundam Wing, and even after War X, these sort of mid-90s Gundams are sort of the classic examples of stock footage overusage, especially in a lot of these battle scenes. So, why didn't they change it? Because they didn't want to pay more money to animate it. They're like, sometimes you'll get one where it's sort of just on Relina the whole time. There doesn't seem that there's not a rhyme or a reason to it. It's just a way to get you back into the commercials. That was it.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I also was impressed to see Commander Sally again. Yep,
Sally, big part of the show going forward. Annoyingly, in the English dub, after this appearance, her voice will change.
Really?
Yes, I don't know why or what happens right now in the English.
Well, in the English, do you know if it changes also in the Japanese?
I have no idea. But in English, it's sort of extremely dramatic. Like they didn't even try. It seems like they actually wanted to go with a very different tone overall, because right now she's sort of like high pitched.
So now, is that because they just recast the actress altogether?
I have no idea. It's always been confusing to me why they've done it. I haven't been able to find any real reasons for why it's happened. All I know is for 2 episodes that she's in, she's got like high pitched Lisa Simpson voice, and then next episode she's got like smoker lady tough army soldier voice.
Well, it's funny you say that because in the show so far, she's definitely somewhere in between the two of those in Japanese. She's somewhere between your feminine and your mature woman archetypes. So I'm curious to see. At some point, you're going to have to sit me down, not as part of the show, to just show me the difference between these two voices, because it intrigues me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so
to let you all know at home that these two individuals do more than just the podcast and then not talk to each other for a week.
No, we're strictly professional. In fact, I'm not even real when I'm not making the podcast. I stop existing.
He is a member of Sealy?
Then I want to say it's a deep cut, but I wonder if it is.
My wife is champing at the bit.
Yes.
To watch Ava again, and she apparently refuses to watch. Not only is she a very hardcore subs individual, but she refuses to watch the dub that has been recently re-released on Netflix, the newer dub, as opposed to the one that I have on my Platinum collection, should I want to listen to it in English.
I think that something has changed, because when I watched it again in the winter, it seemed like the old dub version.
Well, that's interesting, because I know that Netflix specifically recast everybody and tried to make a new, more to the original version of the audio than whatever we had back in the day.
I don't know. I know that some of the songs aren't there for obvious licensing reasons, but the voice actors...
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big problem with shows, especially that came out in the 90s, because you never envisioned sort of the giant home media market that we have now. Like, it's sort of the saddest thing about the Drew Carey show is that it will never get to be on a DVD or on streaming because of all the music it uses quite smartly in its various episodes to kind of give sort of a fresh take on things and experiment and play around. Because in the 90s, you didn't have to worry about putting in contracts like DVD rights, home movie rights, streaming rights. They didn't exist, in 95. Yeah. So now every contract has allowed to use for every medium in perpetuitum throughout the universe. So essentially, like, whatever gets invented, this is going to clear it. If the universe, unless the universe stops existing, we're going to have the rights to redistribute this. But like, in 95, the only way to watch a rerun was on TV. So they made sure to lock up those rights. And then 2002 came around and everybody was like, hey, what if we put out Friends on DVD? That's a popular show. And like, here we are. So it makes sense that this version of a very famous 50s crooners song, you maybe didn't fully clear because it might have been too expensive. So I kind of buy that. But yeah, what they have now for the ending credits is like one of Ray's themes.
Really?
Yep. So... but the voices, if they're not the same, they feel the same and seem fine. But, again, I have no problem with dubs other than...
Not a Gundam podcast.
Other than the occasional G-Wing, G-Gundam. So, great show. I'm excited for when they get to finish that last movie that was supposed to come out in July but didn't get to because of the virus.
Yeah, did we get an official date as to when they are going to put out the last movie? I
don't think they'll know until they sort of go back in full force throughout all of Japan.
Are we going to cut all that, or are we going to keep it in the episode?
Who the fuck knows? I don't give a shit.
Now you have to keep it in the episode for the who the fuck knows?
Who knows? I don't give a shit. It's fine. It's not my podcast. It's okay.
Not your podcast?
It's not my
podcast.
podcast.
It's not your podcast.
So for me, what I always feel that this episode sort of... begins the show proper, partly because of the hero thing I discussed earlier, but also because this is sort of the point. For the first time, I was just like, okay, the Gundams are going to come down, they're going to stop Oz, and then the show's going to be over. But, with Trey's sort of doing things that are very contradictory to other things that he did in the previous episode and kind of starting to recontextualize these early bird scenes, I go like, well, is that what's going to happen? I don't know anymore. And I still think that's what the plan is, but now I'm starting to question. And so now the show's a little livelier. It's got some juice. These characters are a little different than I thought. And Zex is going back and seeming to try to redeem himself. So he's not. So it's sort of weird to see him annoying, kind of in that villain role still, like, but there are no other villains left. So, like, who else could it be? Is something going to happen later? I don't know. And so having that confusion kind of helps keep me engaged as the show goes forward, and you're going to kind of always be sort of, you're never going to be able to find firm ground until close to the end of the show again. So that's sort of what I think allows me to kind of keep coming back to a show like Gundam Wing as many times as I have, even if it's not as craft-wise great as some other Gundam shows.
I'm not going to lie. Dr. J did not make it easy for me to believe that the characters who are wielding the Gundams are wholly good, so much as kids who've been brainwashed to utilize these weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I do not trust Dr. J in the slightest, and whether that's due to the character model choice of giving him a simple claw, or if that's due to the undertones that he had during his drive with Relina, or what have you. I'm not willing to believe that either side is good. I'm just willing to believe that one side is less detrimental than the other. And even then, I don't know which one.
Yes. So exactly. So I like sort of being kept on our toes. And another fun fact that I can say now, because it's never going to come up in the show or the movie, is that Treize is actually the great nephew to the original hero Yui that was assassinated, who was trying to spread sort of peace about the colonies and the Earth through nonviolent protest.
That's interesting. The fact that that does not come up is, I don't know if that's a thing that they decide to add in post fact, or if that's just the only way they could do it was in a light novel or something.
Yeah,
but.
so, as I sort of mentioned it earlier, there was just so much information that and backstory and stuff that they wanted to do that, anything that wasn't absolutely necessary was left out. And they do enough with Treize throughout the show where you don't fully need the hero Yui connection to get what they want you to get, but it certainly does support what they want you to get if you do have it in the back of your mind.
Okay.
And there are other fun things about Zex and Relina and some of the Gundam pilots and even Lady Un that I can bring up as we go on that will never get to be talked about in the show, but I'll talk about them more when they're more appropriate.
Perfect. I look forward to that. Now, with all that said, Skeyhill, I feel like we need to know the way we go.
Yes. So this is now Old Man Patrick here getting up in a soapbox, and it didn't come up in this episode, but not having Relina in it reminded me of earlier episodes. And what is the deal with birthdays? Why do we care so much about our birthdays? Why is this sort of like, you can play it for a joke, like sympathy, like, oh, no one remembered my birthday, or like, I don't like people sort of care. And I just saw a movie last week where like this woman threw this, or maybe it was a man, I don't remember. Somebody threw like a big hissy fit because somebody else came in and was like ruining their birthday, and they're like, this is my day. So like, what is sort of this big deal with birthdays? Because I know I'm in sort of the minority, so like, why do we like them so much? Just for my edification.
Well, I will say, not necessarily on behalf of the audience, but at the very least, as the common denominator, people like to feel special. People like to feel acknowledged. And if there's any guarantee that we are given that we will get something of that effect, it is one day out of a given year where we get to say, hey, acknowledge me. It's not that you have to love me. It's not that you have to care, but you have to at least acknowledge me. And I'm going to take your thing about birthdays, and I'm actually going to throw something to you.
Yeah.
The idea of acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in a lot of the subs for shows that I've watched, I don't know if it's just a choice on the translator's parts or what have you, but I've always been interested in this idea of I acknowledge you or I don't acknowledge you. That carries so much weight. And I don't know if that has to do with just the inflection of it or if it has something to do with a deeper desire as a human. But anytime I've seen somebody say, I do not acknowledge you, there is something that wells somewhere between sadness and anger in the person who receives that, or the I acknowledge you. It doesn't have to have any kind of romantic or familial or otherwise connection beyond you're good in my book, to have it in the American turn of phrase. I wonder, do you feel like people not just need, but deserve that?
I guess I'm confused why you brought this up. I have you been hearing people say, I acknowledge you, I don't acknowledge you in your life? Because I don't, or in anything you've watched? Because I don't think I don't know if I've ever noticed that before.
Well, in the States, we don't tend to use that. And I've been a proponent for trying to incorporate it into the American cultural lexicon. I believe that to acknowledge someone creates a joy that a lot of us do not have because of the way that our culture has evolved over the past century. Whenever we have friends or other people in our lives that we want to acknowledge, we can't say, I love you easily because of a lot of stigma that comes attached to that word and the implication between individuals. We only acknowledge romantic love, maybe familial love, and that's it. there's no way that you can use the word love without other connotations per our culture. As opposed to other countries where it's not uncommon to do things like just, even if it's a kissy sound next to someone's face, the acknowledgement of that individual and showing that you care about them and hope them good health, that you have this desire to have them close to you in your life. We fear that in the United States. And I think by taking this notion that I first saw in the translations of anime as I acknowledge or I do not acknowledge you, would help that in our culture. But I take it from me to you in terms of the birthday thing, because that is a guaranteed day to be acknowledged. And so if someone chooses to take your acknowledgement from you, or is attempting to say, no, you're not worthy of acknowledgement today, I don't care what day it is, there is definitely a frustration, if nothing else, that is, I feel, rightfully deserved in that moment.
In the moment of the birthday?
Yeah, at any age, whether you're 5 years old, 50 years old, or on your deathbed, if you have a birthday, I understand why you want that acknowledgement. It's not about how old you are. It's not about, hey, I survived this long. It's about being acknowledged. I think you could nix the whole birthday thing so long as you knew that there was a day somewhere in the year that was yours where you're allowed to be acknowledged.
So
I think it's ridiculous when people do, this is my birthday week, this is my birthday month, and they try to take the whole of it for them. I don't like that.
So do you want me to...
all you're asking for is a day to be acknowledged, why not?
Do you want me to address the birthday thing or the love acknowledged thing? Because I
feel like you can do it all at the same.
I don't know. For the love acknowledged thing, I think there's probably a lexical problem there, and if we wanted to sort of broaden our, emotional attachment to people linguistically, we should do what the Greeks did and just invent extra love words that could mean different things, and that would be fine. There you go.
Your classical heart, I'm sure, loves that, but
it's not classical. It's just linguistics. There was an efficient system. You had a love for siblings, and you had a love for parents, and you had a love for spouse, and you had a love for, mistress, and you had a love for country, and you had a love for just stuff that you liked. So, but love has already sort of shifted so much where we say, I love this show. I love this food. So, that's more recent than we care to admit. So if you can do that, you can do other things, and maybe, a word doesn't help that much there, to expand that and just sort of people doing what you want to do, be mocked by some people, but have other people then jump on board who also agree with you, and then there's just more of you. So that would be a way to address that. As for birthdays, I sort of play by the rules of when in Rome, where I don't care about birthdays. I don't actually care that I care that you've lived another year. It just feels like we're picking a date. I'll go. I'll get you the gift. I'll use the excuse to hang out with you. But I would do that. I guess I wouldn't get you a gift, but if you said, "Hey, Pat, come on over," and I had the time, I'd still do it. If we need an excuse, fine, but whatever. But I didn't walk at either of my graduations, but I went because I didn't think it was a big deal. I didn't care, but I knew my fellow classmates and friends did, so I went there and I cheered them on and I celebrated for them because they cared about it. But I don't give a shit. So if you need it, fine. But in my mind, it's something that we're building up that perhaps we don't have to.
I think this is a longer discussion than what we have time for in The Way We Go.
Certainly, yes. Well, then, we can leave it at that unless you have any last things you want to get in before we move into our favorite corner, the Nerd Corner.
I think I'm already walking to the Nerd Corner.
There we are. All right, so this week I have finished a book by a brilliant woman named Martha Nochison, and it is called Wild at Heart in Hollywood, The Passion of David Lynch, and it is sort of describing David, a feminist critique of David Lynch's early works in Hollywood and sort of the different ways that he approaches sort of certain conventions and finding ways to kind of point out the cultural, the systemic flaws within those tropes and how, and also our reliance on their illusions as being something akin to reality. So it's very interesting. She goes much more deep into the sort of quantum mechanics of it in her follow-up book, David Lynch Swears, which talks about sort of the second half of his career that I'm beginning now. But it was a really great book. It goes from his student short films / Eraserhead up until the Fire Walk With Me movie. It even has a little appendix because I have a second edition that briefly touches about Lost Highway, though that begins the next book in earnest. Great book.
Yeah. So remind me, does Blue Velvet come before or after Lost Highway?
It becomes long before. It is.
That's what I thought.
His first. It is, I guess, his second Hollywood film. But the first one where he started to kind of explore things that would become very traditionally Lynchian at the Hollywood level.
So Eraserhead is not Hollywood.
No, that's his graduate thesis film.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Back when they would let you do a feature film, I think that they should still do that. I think that's more useful than these short films for the current landscape. You can do it with the resources that you have. I know you can. It did take him 5 years to make his, though. But then,
how long did it take for us to make our feature film?
6 months.
Skeyhill?
So, it's not that. It can be done, especially if you're a 2-year program and you're going in there doing it. They can write the first year while they're making sort of their couple of short film practice films. And then in the last year, you sort of shoot. I mean, independent films are shooting in 17 days this month. So you just keep your page limit small. Try not to do anything crazy. And yeah, you could edit that quickly. It's very feasible. I think you should do it. But, yes, his first, so he does that. For 3 years, it plays in the midnight theaters over and over again. And somebody says, hey, why don't you make Elephant Man? And it goes on to get nominated for an Academy Award. And then they're like, all right, well, now here's a budget. Don't do whatever you want because, you win awards. He hasn't gotten non-sound design awards since then. But you have a film like Mulholland Drive that's been called the best film of that decade it came out, the best film of this millennium, in the top 20s of those films. So he's still getting the critical acclaim. I think, his Mulholland Drive was the best film of the first decade of the millennium, and Twin Peaks Season 3 was the best film of the second decade of the millennium. So he seems to not be stopped when you let him do whatever he wants.
Yeah. Well worth. I have to say, having seen Blue Velvet with you and having seen a number of Lynch pieces, I absolutely respect that filmmaker. And I do still need to get not just Fire Walk With Me under my belt, but also Mulholland Drive, because I had a teacher in my freshman year of college when I was a film studies major at the time, who was obsessed with Mulholland Drive. It had just come out on DVD a couple of years after or something.
Yeah.
When did Mulholland Drive come out?
Now I'm trying. It actually came out early in that decade, maybe 2002, 3, 4 in that area.
Okay, well that's why I say, because I went to college in 2006.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yes, then that would time out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's fine then.
But she was enraptured by that. But that's nothing to say of the Coen brothers either. They're prolific, and I love the shit out of them.
Yeah. So
but that's not my part of the nerd corner.
Yes. What? Go on. What's your part?
That is not my part of the nerd corner. What is my part of the nerd corner is the interest that I have found in trying to build cubes. I'm apparently going to just go down the magic hole. It's not like we're going to be doing magic related content down the line or anything, but
yes, be specific, Bob, for people who are less familiar.
Yes, sorry. Magic the Gathering is a collectible card game that has been well known for over 25 years at this point. And there are many different ways that you can play with these cards. But the way in which I'm going to discuss is Cube. Cube is just taking a number of cards, generally 360 in total, and just choosing the ones that you feel would work best together in terms of their synergy. You hang out with about 7 other people, and you build decks from those based on what is called drafting, where you just take a pack, you pick one, you pass it, so on and so forth. One way, another way, a final way. You build a deck. It's a great way to be able to take, whether it's cards you like, formats you like, certain sets and blocks, which is comprising of several different sets, turning that all into just a boxed game that you can pull out whenever you have friends over and say, hey, we enjoyed this. Let's do it again. But this time, we're not going to be able to build the same deck because we don't know what we're going to pick next. I'm intrigued by this. I've found a website, cubetutor.com. If you're listening to this now, I would rush over there because there are questions of whether or not the website will stay up for very long due to some programming issues that are going to be taking place sometime in the near future. But if you go there, you can get lists. You can find cards. You can buy proxies. You can just print off black and white versions of the card and put them on cardstock and just build a cube. And I'm hoping that when this disease-riddled age of 2020 goes away by 2022, we will be able to have Skeyhill and myself on sometime when he is on the East Coast or when I am on the West Coast, be able to sit down together and hand each other cards in less than 6 feet distance without having to wear face masks. That'll be great. But until then, you should be doing all that because how dare you?
All right. We'd like to thank you all for listening this week. I'd like to thank Bob for joining me this episode and this season. Bob, you got some plugs.
I do, but I want to thank Patrick Skeyhill for allowing me to subject him to G Gundam when I know he is very much a fan of the war and political intrigue of the other series. He is finally allowing me to do this with him, and I have yet to say it, so thank you, Patrick. But you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and several other websites by looking at my handle, BobSkerry VOA. That's BOBSKERRY VOA. You can also go to thathandle.com, bobskerryvoa.com, and you'll be able to find my website. You can hire me from there or at least contact me. You can also listen to my demos where you can hear a variety of voices for commercial, narration, and character work. What about you, Scale?
Well, we'll get to me in a moment, but of course we have to thank our audio maven, Lev Van Rensselaer, the audio maven making the sounds that you are craving. Bob, tell the audience what kind of animal you're afraid of.
I'm terrified of cats.
Just one big communication.